This is Sportish.
Do it better.
This is Sportish. This is Sportish. This is Sportish. This is Sportish.
This is Sportish. Welcome back in the box, everybody. It's no longer an all New Jersey show this week. Back in a New York state of mind. I'm Geoff Brault. He's Dr. Keith Strudler, director of the School of Communication and Media at Montclair State University. Our producer is Mike Wallace, and the identity of any potential guest hosts is still unknown. Yes, a bit of mystery as we begin March Madness, Keith, and we will talk quite a bit about the NCAA tournament on this show, but first, I gotta check how's your blood sugar?
Excuse me? My blood sugar is
How's your blood sugar?
because of the tournament coming up, or is that
No, you didn't hear about this because of the high school sports announcer in Oklahoma. You didn't hear about this? Oh, well, let me break some news to you right off the top. In Norman, Oklahoma, a high school girls basketball announcer is in some really hot water as he was caught on a hot mic using the N-word
That's
to
correct.
describe the Norman high school girls basketball team, who he then released a statement, Keith, and it may be the best statement ever released, and by best, I of course mean worst, blaming his racism on his low blood sugar.
I'm sorry, I wasn't aware of the tease you were throwing me at the beginning of the show. That's something you could have told me in the minutes before we were preparing that this is how we were going to do this. So yes, let's be clear. I make many mistakes in life. I will not make that mistake, but I make lots of mistakes live on air. I will never attribute my mistakes to that medical condition because I'm not diabetic, because with the amount of sugar I ate, if I were diabetic, I'd be dead right now. No question. And secondly, or thirdly, if I were diabetic, you can bet your last dollar I'd be in line to get this vaccine. I'm sitting in the back with the common folk like everyone else. So I can tell you right now, if I had an actual medical condition, I wouldn't be sitting in this chair. I'd be lining up to get Sputnik thrown into my arm. So obviously the announcer made I don't want to call it mistake, because that's not it. Did something that is reprehensible, unacceptable, will cost him his career on air and so forth. Just own it. I mean, you made a mistake. I've always had an issue because we've seen not this particular playbook, but we've seen people doing things that are unacceptable on media. There's only one way to move forward, generally speaking, from my perspective, and that's to own it. You own what you've done, and you will follow that pathway forward. It rarely works out where you blame that mistake or that what you've done on something as odd as that, as an insulin spike. I mean, it's not even a good one. It's not even a good one. So there you go. But our mistakes, we're going to own our mistakes. We're going to own them. Like last week's show, I blame that on you.
What? First of all, last week's show by the Metrics, Keith, by the Metrics, was one of our most beloved programs. And so much so that I thought about extending my stay. I thought about staying for a couple extra days down in Atlantic City after all the business was handled, just so we could try to recapture that magic.
So what's the casino scene right now like in Atlantic City?
Packed, uncomfortably crowded. So many people.
I mean, let's if anyone has any thoughts that gambling may not be an addiction, I think we've dispelled those ideas. So people are just like, look, I understand we're going through a deadly pandemic. I got to get my backgammon on. Like there's money to be won and lost around here.
Either we're doing much better with the vaccine rollout than anyone wants to believe, or people have stopped caring. One of those two things are true, because there were multiple times over the course of the last week where I wanted to go and get a drink or a snack from one of the like grab and go restaurant areas in the hotel and turned around and didn't because of how many people were there.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and if you know the casino landscape, I've spent more time in Vegas than Atlantic City, but it's always it's buzzing when you go into the lobbies, into the floor, into the pit, and it's always buzzing. And that's part of the energy. Is there's a lot of people. But that's something. And so I imagine, of course, now that the NCAA tournament, there's no place that's more kind of invigorating than a casino during the NCAA tournament.
Then you go ahead and throw the fact that it's spring break week on top of all of that.
Let me tell you, I mean, I don't want to say something disparaging to my state, to the great state of New Jersey. And I love it. I love New Jersey. And I love it every day. Every day I live here, I love New Jersey a little bit more. And it really does grow on you. But if people are planning their spring breaks for Atlantic City, that's a little sad. If they're like, look, it's barely cracked the 50s here, but we're going to hit the beach. We're just.
I will say on my way out of town, leaving the arena after the championship game, there was a massive St. Patrick's Day party in what had to be the parking lot of massive. So don't count out those New Jersey and South Philadelphia college students just yet.
Yep. I understand. I'm speaking to my folks at Montclair State. Please don't. We're doing really well. Please don't. I'd like to get through this crisis and move on to stage B.
Now, speaking of March Madness and speaking of championship games, I see our new shipment of warm-up shirts has arrived.
I forgot. I should have made this tighter when I was writing it. So just us, Sportish, and the best part is half the viewers and half the people I've talked to seem to not get it. The joke's always funnier when you have to explain it. So as you know, all of the teams that are Nike affiliated have been wearing on the bench just us, and it'll say Tar Heels or it'll say Vols or whatever team it is. Just us, Sportish, baby. That's the way we roll. That is the way we roll.
The last 3 years, Nike started putting slogans on shirts, and I would never disparage Nike because that's a potential sponsorship opportunity. Unlike the Olive Garden, we welcome Nike sponsorship of this program. But I will say
are we going to bring back? I don't think Sportish viewers heard. I can't remember if Sportish viewers have heard our unfiltered. Well, in your case, disdain for the Olive Garden.
Oh, they have. Go back into the archives, ftfnext.com or wherever your podcasts are served. Around like episode 22 or so, we got into that. Yeah. Nike's last 3 years, big swing and a miss with these slogans. 3 years ago, family. Last year, our time. This year, just us. I feel like it's the first 3 tracks of a third-rate boy band album.
Yeah, the Just Us one doesn't make a lot of sense because I don't even understand what that means. And other than just us, because when one of us tests positive, it's just us getting shipped out of here. Just us going away. The Just Us makes no sense to me. I mean, the other ones, family, I kind of understand because that's a common sports refrain. The Just Us one, I mean, like just us, like no one is going to be bringing meals to you. You're going to have to do that yourself. Like just us doesn't seem to make a lot of sense.
The only thing I wondered is if it was like a play on justice because of all the things that gone on with social justice this year in the world. That was the only thing I could sort of think of, if maybe they really put a lot of thought into it.
Sometimes you can get a little too smart for your own good. Most people, newsflash about TV viewers, literal is good. Like you should never make people work too hard for the joke.
I totally agree. And that's why they missed a golden opportunity. What the warm-up shirt should have said this year, tested. It would have been perfect.
Well, as Jim Cotter, our esoteric sports expert, said, the NCAA tournament has put an entirely new spin on survive and advance. So maybe.
Now, look, they're not doing terribly, the NCAA tournament. As we're coming to you Thursday at noon, which is when we now debut on For the Fans, wherever you find For the Fans, ftfnext.com.
And by the way, go to the YouTube channel because that's the one that makes us feel good because that's where the numbers are.
Yeah. You can also watch us on For the Fans YouTube. Just search for Sportish. We'll be there. You don't have more ways to watch Sportish. You have so many ways that no one was asking for to watch this program that I feel like, Keith, we're actually paralyzing our fans. They have so many ways to engage with our content that they don't know which one to pick. And so they just end up watching The Office for the 12th time.
Well, two things. What I will say is now we know when people say, I didn't watch your show or I couldn't watch it, they're actively like they don't want to watch. It used to be, it was a little bit of effort. I now know that that they're actually trying. Also, just one of our loyal viewers, my mom, who does watch every episode on FTFnext.com, she didn't like your background for the last episode. Just newsflash. So if we do another one of these road shows, step it up a little bit.
So the NCAA tournament, it's going pretty good. We're coming to you on the day of the first four, Thursday morning. Games are about to start. However, we record a few days prior to that, and as of now,
not a few. We've really only about a day and a half at this point. Day and 3/4. Don't extend it further than
2 days.
Yeah, less than 2 days. Is it noon?
It's
newsflash to my boss.
PM on Tuesday.
It's not noon. It's not noon. I'm not doing this during work hours.
6 officials have been bounced from the NCAA tournament. 5 people in the testing tiers came up positive in the intake testing, which out of 67 travel parties, I think is great.
That's quite good.
Now, keep in mind, you needed 7 consecutive days of positive tests to get into the bubble. And so to still have 5 is a little concerning, but that's a very small number, and it's certainly not going to derail the tournament. No. The third thing we've learned, people don't apparently enjoy the food while they're being quarantined awaiting the games. So that'll be an interesting subplot to follow throughout this tournament, is how they feel about what they're being given to eat. But in terms of the coronavirus protocols, exceptionally strict and also seemingly exceptionally successful.
I know the Louisville men's program seemed to be upset that they didn't make it in, especially since pretty much they've all had COVID anyway. They're like, look, we're the safest team around. Do you think they're secretly like, boy, that looks miserable.
It really does look miserable. And if you're, a happy to be there team, an automatic qualifier, you're expecting to be there for, a week, maybe 10 days at the most. I think you're happy and excited. If you're a national championship contender, you're buckling in for like a month of this.
Yeah. And you know a little bit more about this bubble environment than I do. Tell me a little bit about now when you're in Indy, say, there's got to be. I mean, we talked about this in the Orlando situation. You got a lot of people there. There have to be some hierarchies now on the hotel situation. There have to be. Not everyone can be in a 5-star environment.
I actually believe in Indy that everybody is in a very good situation. I do not believe that anyone, it got some 2-star hot wire situation where they rolled the dice and it came up snake eyes. Like, I don't think that happened.
Are you telling me that no one, because I know the people at the NCAA have great senses of humor. No one.
If you want comedy, you want the NCAA.
Should not they have done where each team had to go on Hotwire and roll the dice?
They should have done that. Each team should have had to take the Hotwire dice roll, which you and I have talked about is our favorite form of gambling. There's nothing we like more than hot wiring.
We dealt with some students in the past who refused to go hot wire and chose to go to a lower tier hotel for the certainty. And by the way, when you go lower tier in New York City, you're starting to take some risks because the avalanche is enormous in Manhattan. It's enormous.
The La Quinta Kips Bay is lurking. And so, in New York City, you want to take the hot wire. There's so many great hotels in New York City that one of them is bound to have unsold rooms.
And once you've committed to the 4, 4.5, or 5-star echelon, you're going to get something that is far beyond what you were going to get otherwise. Certainly far more than I would have supported from a budgetary perspective. But I actually, and I throw this on my family, when we go on vacation, when obviously, like, I know we can afford, to get some certainty, I actually almost always force us to go hot wire because I want, just for that rush, the best part of this, when it's circling,
Yep. It is a rush. And I will say this to the hot wire people. Look, you will not find bigger fans than us. We love your product. You're taking too much of the mystery out of it. Now, when you go for the mystery spin, they're like, it's one of these 3 hotels. Here's a real picture of it. And it's super easy to figure out what hotel it is. That's not what we want. That's not what we want. We want the suspense.
They actually
give us the suspense hot wire.
We actually should start a competitor to Hotwire that takes all of the because now you can basically get some certainty that really makes it a total crapshoot. Maybe we should start a Hotwire where you don't even get to choose your star level, where it's
I mean, it truly is everywhere in the vicinity. It's not a terrible idea, and I'll tell you why. As I've learned over the last week, a lot of people really like gambling in this country. So if you think about it, if we set up a model where you've got all the 5-star hotels in the city and all the 2-star hotels in the city all in one, and you package it together and say, hey, you're sleeping somewhere for $115 tonight.
Yeah.
I think you're going to get enough people that are like, you're telling me I could get the JW Marriott for $150. I could stay at the Ritz-Carlton
might be at the Ritz
for $115 a night. Yeah, it's worth the risk of possibly ending up in hotel chain X that I will not disparage.
Well, no, go ahead. Who are you going to name? I know. Who are you going?
I mean, I've already named the La Quinta in Kips Bay, so I'm going to keep riding La Quinta.
No, because the choice I feel like that's part of the choice hotel chain. They're out. Like we're out of that. Is that in the Best Western family? I believe. I can't even. I have an issue with Best Western. I have an issue with Best Western because they sometimes build themselves as a slightly more premium than they are. And the other problem is there's a European version of this, and they seem to bill it as higher quality than I think. Although in Europe, you want to talk about Wild West of hotels. You're not even guaranteed to have a toilet.
But to finish my point, another reason I think this business would be successful, people would come to us for the joy of that gamble. And yeah, you may end up at a La Quinta for $115 a night, but I actually think that pricing model, the amount of times that we would have to splurge on a room at the Ritz for $115, and make up the difference would be offset by the amount of times that people would pay more because of the true gambling aspect of it.
When we go on the road, I'll guarantee you, because we are going to take this show on the road. And I also, one of the things I am most excited for post-COVID is to take Sportish on the road. Now, granted, we are still going to be sitting basically in two parts of the same room on a Zoom call.
Correct. Yeah. What we're actually talking about doing is just taking pictures of our backgrounds and making that our virtual background while we're live on location.
But we are going on the road. We're going to use the power of being on For the Fans, get ourselves some press pass. We're going to give some great attention to a sporting event around the country. We're not sure where that is. We have discussed potentially an H-Town visit, just because I've got family down there. We've got a lot of you've never been to that city. I'd love to give you the food tour of Houston. You'll get very agitated when I keep taking you to vegan spots.
Very. Listen, pick all the best vegan spots that also have a steakhouse next door.
So
show me that criteria.
Wait. That might be our next food restaurant concept. It's called like turf and grass. So when you have the couples that, where one is a pure meatitarian and you've got a vegan. So they have this binomial, and maybe they're going to need to do something with all this plexiglass. Maybe there's plexiglass in the middle of the table forever.
I think you were close on the name. I think it's turf and tofu. I think it's got to be turf and tofu. And I do think it should be like that episode of I Love Lucy where they just drew a line down the middle, and one side should be just pure like wood paneled steakhouse, and the other side like sitting in the field at Woodstock in the 60s.
It's Moosewood mixed with Ruth Chris, right? It's
turf and tofu.
I'd go to that. So that's patent pending on that. So we will, but we're going to take the show on the road, and that's going to be one of the first joys. But I promise you, we will only use Hotwire. We will never book in a traditional. So sorry, Expedia, we're just not going to do it. We will only use Hotwire, and we'd like to get some support from obviously corporate on that, from Hotwire corporate and FDF corporate, of course, as well.
Wherever the NCAA tournament teams ended up, they seem to be living well in their bubble. But here's something that I'm bristling at. When players, and it was a player, it was a coach, and there may be more in the time between when we tape and when this comes out, that said that they weren't happy with the food that they were getting in the bubble. It's very similar to what happened at the NBA when they were in their quarantine period before you could really get to a team meal and have a lot of choice. You just get a bag dropped off at your door, and that's what you'd be eating. People online, when they said they weren't happy with what they were being served immediately were like, how dare you? You're ungrateful. And I take issue with that. I take issue with that because the NCAA is putting these people in an extraordinary circumstance. This is not the way this tournament is normally run. And if you're going to ask these people to do extraordinary things so that this tournament can run smoothly, I think you owe them an extraordinary experience. And you have to make sure that the little details like the food, which honestly shouldn't even be considered a little detail, but I think you have to make sure that when people get their meals, they go, well, this is much better than I thought it was going to be. I think there's an obligation to do that to these players that have had to sacrifice a ton to get to this point and that are being asked to sacrifice even more at the very end. You know, I don't like the people that, oh, you're spoiled. Imagine what they eat in the Division III tournament. I think that the NCAA owes them the best of the best that they can possibly provide them.
And by the way, I'm going to tell you right now, think about some of these D3 teams, Williams, Amherst, they're eating well. And if they aren't, the alumni are bringing the food in. Like I guarantee you those teams are eating just fine.
The D3 teams aren't in a bubble like this. Like
That's
the D3
exactly
team
right.
can order in from whatever restaurant they want to order in from.
I know this because we've had some situations. I know someone who was at a very successful D3 school. I am very clear on how this all works. I agree with you. And there's a couple of caveats to that, or a couple of addendums. There is nothing that athletes care about more. You know this, having traveled with a lot of sports teams, having been on a college team that traveled around a lot. You care a lot about your meals. Like, first of all, you got nothing else to do. You're like cattle. You're basically just sitting there waiting, especially that's what you do. You just count the days until they call you in for food again. And then you realize, oh, it must be lunchtime. You don't even,
kind of not wrong.
You're not driven by hunger. You're literally driven by a calendar.
Yeah. And by the way, caveat, this is not, you care about, like making sure that you're fueling your body with proper food so that you can perform at your best. No. We're talking quantity. You care about quantity of food, like back the trough up. That's what you care about.
So, but then, and runners get weird. You're like, well, I'm going to run tomorrow. Is this going to be good in my stomach? So people get crazy about their food when they're on the road. We would get angry. I mean, there was a revolt on the bus ride home from a cross country or track meet if there wasn't a friendlies involved. And there were plenty of friendlies in upstate New York. And we were like, look, we're getting the triple Sunday, coach, whether it's your scalp or not. Like we're getting this thing. Like, so you're going to pull that bus over in the Finger Lakes Mall, and we're going to get our Reese's Sundays right now. So we got meal money and we plan on using it. So the athletes do care a lot about the food they eat, and particularly when you're not like, you can't sneak out and go to a supermarket or something like that, which is what you do when you don't like the food on a trip. Mm-hmm. That's a B. You mentioned the little details. You notice bowl games always get it right. Like bowl games always get it right because they want to make sure that the teams have this extraordinary experience when they're doing this. All right. And so the food is like, I mean, if you're ever around a team that's playing like the Outback Bowl, that steakhouse is rolling. Like they are breeding cattle just for the experience. Like if you're an onion farmer, you just live like, can't wait till Wisconsin gets here because they always bring some farm team in. They're like, we're gonna send our kids to college off this one. They do that because they want to create that experience. And I agree. I think if you wanted positive press out of this, it would not. This is a detail when you're spending the hundreds of millions of dollars or whatever it's taken to make this thing happen because it's so extraordinary. Put a little extra time and money, hire a food czar. By the way, we would have been great choices to have been the NCAA tournament food czars. They really should have made sure that this was an experience that the athletes would have said, yeah, this sucks. I'm basically waiting for a game. I'm nervous. I don't even really get the press interviews I normally like. I don't get to see my friends. I'm sitting here. I mean, you're basically doing Zoom classes in between, right? I mean, you're constantly on. You can't even now be like, I can't do class because I'm in the NCAA tournament. You can do class now. They should have absolutely taken a little bit more attention. And I understand the NCAA has had to go through a lot to make this happen. I actually believe that most athletes want to be there, but they should have taken care of those details. You're right.
And I think the NCAA is doing a great job by and large. And I think the tournament is going to be played and going to be played successfully, depending on your definition of success. Sure. But it gets it like when the 6 officials got bounced from the tournament, a lot of people are just very quick to be like, what do you mean you guys went to a restaurant? That's ridiculous. How could you possibly do that? To me, their rooms needed to be ready. The officials got bounced because they showed up in Indianapolis. The hotel didn't have their rooms ready. They were hungry after a day of travel. I'm sure everybody can sympathize with what that's like. And the NCAA basically said, we're not ready for you. And they were faced with a choice. sit on the floor and wait or go across the parking lot and eat. And now they're being vilified for going across the parking lot and eating. And
do we know it? Where did they?
Do
we know where they ate? Do we know where they went? Because that's the real rub. What if we find out they went across the street for a Bennigan's? Like they.
Well, there's another sponsorship off the list. Unless you're speaking of Bennigan's in a highly positive way.
No.
What if they went to a Bennigan's? No, that wasn't how you meant it.
I think they're out of business, so I think they're safe. Although someone may have bought like a company, someone may have bought like the name rights to use just in case someone wanted to copyright a word for garbage. But
wasn't that not to be off topic? Wasn't that one of the worst eras of food in the history of this country? The TGI Fridays copycats. So you just get and they're all exactly the same. And there's 70 of them, and thankfully we've moved past that. It was a copy of, to be fair, a bad product to start with. I mean, it's not like TGI Fridays was getting Michelin stars. I mean, they were barely serving human grade food, and then there's right off I tell you, if Hotwire and Nike don't come through, we are in a bad way with sponsorships.
And by the way, I mean, you want to talk about, I mean, I understand COVID has killed the salad bar. Ruby Tuesdays did that a long time ago. Just watching people who probably didn't need the all-you-can-eat opportunity go in there, just rub their faces up in front of the macaroni salad. And by the way, nothing worse than when you're dragging your food from the salad bar into another container. I am no more angry than when I see someone pull like a mayonnaise-based product into the lettuce dish on a salad bar or something like that. You know what I mean? You know what I mean. And by the way, as a vegetarian, I don't want to, those bacon bits, they have a place and it is not everywhere. All right. So it's just because these greedy, like food hungry, whatever. I mean, these people that just can't get enough, like the mouth was not big enough and they just keep on shoving off the salad bar. So they're grabbing industrial size servings with a medium serving spoon. Of course it's going to get all over. So you know what? Sayonara, salad bar. We didn't need you anyway. So I said this before, and we're actually talking about this a lot at work. I will never use the term silver lining with COVID. It's unfair to everyone who's truly suffered in COVID. There's no silver lining. This thing sucks. It is awful. Hopefully, it's one of the worst experiences that our generation and other generations will ever have to live through. But one of the things that happen that I will not complain about is the end of the salad bar. It's over. Give it to me on a plate. I will order my salad.
Mine is the end of not being able to get alcohol to go from restaurants. So, we're all going to emerge just a little bit better as a society. Fingers crossed. Okay. It's March Madness. We know that. Do you know what else it is, Keith? Especially if you live in Virginia. Do you know what else this month is?
Virginia. I don't know. Is it the election's over because that's DC related? I don't know. What's happening?
It's vasectomy mayhem.
That's not just Virginia. It's everywhere. I was about, literally when you said that, I was about to be like, well, I have a vasectomy story, but I don't actually. And if I did, it's not to be shared. Like, I mean, I don't know how deep into my own personal, I have, this is as far as I'm going to go on this. I've never experienced a vasectomy firsthand, so I can't.
Are we experiencing some secondhand?
Hey, can I see that stitch work?
I'm just here to observe. It's like an episode of The Nick. So it's vasectomy mayhem in Virginia. At least it was until the NCAA reared its ugly head. A small urology office outside of Richmond has been sued by the NCAA.
Offices. There's no small urology offices. They all are important. To everyone who walks into that urology office, that's the biggest, most important urology office in the world.
No. Well, Mark Emmert don't care because the NCAA has sued this urology office for trademark infringement, saying that vasectomy mayhem violates their March Madness trademark. And you might look at this on its surface and say, well, that's stupid. It's nothing like March Madness, even though it is. And the guy's holding a basketball in his ad. It's
nothing like March. The vasectomy itself is nothing like, although it is, it's do or die. Survive in advance.
The ball is tipped. Now,
one shining moment.
Now, this is the second time, Keith, that this particular urology office has been sued by the NCAA. Because in 2016, they tried to make March vasectomy madness, and they were given a cease and desist for that.
But you can't own Mayhem. I mean, like, there are companies like Allstate has Mayhem as well. Mayhem, like, or is that Allstate? One of those.
Yeah, Allstate. Yeah.
Right. And so, I mean, can you technically, first of all, well, there's a couple things here. I would assume you can't own Mayhem. And of course, we're talking about this, and the reason they use this promotion is because the NCAA tournament is the number one time when people go to get vasectomies. Right. That's their gold rush. So
this is true. So they schedule their vasectomy so that they can be recovering at home for the first 2 days of the NCAA tournament. That is absolutely correct.
So
that is a correct and true statement.
It's the number one. It's the number one period for casinos and I feel bad for someone that literally has to go into the urologist like that week for something else. Like, it hurts when I pee, and has to sit there with all these nervous Nancy's like walking around, like getting ready to go under the knife. And this guy's like, I just want to get in. Do you think, what kind of protocols do you have to take during COVID for the surgery? I guess you can wear a mask. It's not going to make a lot of, your face can be covered.
I mean, you can kind of stay 6 feet apart. If you think about it, you can socially distance.
But I want the doctor in. I don't want the doctor at a distance. I want the doctor in there. Like, I want
it is a procedure where you want him to have full control over his tools. You don't want him to take, right. Exactly.
Yeah. It's a precision.
But I can't believe I'm saying this, because they've been sued twice. And when you see the ads, vasectomy mayhem is very clearly trying to play on March Madness. I'm on the NCAA side. I think they're right.
So here's what I would say. And now there's a couple things. I'm not sure this is the best approach for the urologist. There are a lot of words I'd like affiliated if I were to go in for that procedure. Mayhem is not one. I don't want the doctor walking out and being like, how'd it go? Be like, that was mayhem in there.
You're not wrong about that. You are not wrong about that. That is very, very low on the list of words you want to hear after a vasectomy.
I actually don't. Last second shot. I don't want any of the analogies. We had a real upset. Didn't turn out the way I expected. I want it to be as predictable. I want it to be the Lakers playing a high school team. I want it to be so mayhem is not the greatest word. Secondly, if you're Mark Emmert and you're in the NCAA, I see this actually as a huge opportunity. Why wouldn't you want everyone lining up and going under the knife and sitting down? I'm sure we're going to have a lot of conversations about ratings for the tournament, I'm sure, quite soon, because no one knows. Things have been down relatively consistently across the board throughout COVID. And obviously a lot of the hype that goes into building up the NCAA tournament just wasn't feasible because of, first of all, we haven't been watching a lot of college basketball, although to be fair, most people who watch the tournament don't watch a lot of college basketball throughout the year, but there hasn't been the same kind of audience building throughout the season. So none of us really know whether this tournament will catch fire at all. And I actually had to work pretty hard, and I'm there now to get myself kind of jacked up for the tournament. I started watching this week and I'm like, I know it's weird. I know it's different, but I'm going to enjoy it. Like, I'm going to sit and I'm going to enjoy the experience. And I think I will. And there's some great matchups and all that kind of stuff. But, and I think it won't be exactly the same, but I think it'll still be great. Kind of like the NBA bubble was still great. I do think though, Mark Emmert should jump on top. I think the NCAA should be sponsoring. Like, they should be like, get your vaccine. And while you're at it, get your other preventive measure. Like, go ahead.
I do think you bring up a good point about being sort of unprepared for the tournament, if you will, or being surprised, because I too just found it very difficult to follow college basketball this year. And when the bracket was released on Selection Sunday, if you had given me 250 guesses at the 1 seeds, I would not have gotten Illinois. That came so far out of. I'm like, Illinois is good now,
and you really haven't been watching. You haven't been watching. You haven't been watching.
No, I kind of. It's been really difficult to follow the teams that are on pause. You know, it just feels like there hasn't been the normal ramp up through like your multi-team tournament season in November. Like, you don't sort of get a feel for who's good when they play each other in the big games in the non-league play, and you never know who's on pause, who's not, who's got their best players, who's opted out, and like. Illinois came. They're good now. Apparently,
Illinois is good. I'm sure they'll disappoint their fans and find a way to lose in the second round because they have to be miserable. But Illinois is good. It's really weird going in the tournament because I've obviously, unlike you, I enjoy picking brackets because I enjoy joy in life, and you don't. So
do not fill out a bracket because I truly enjoy life. You and this is exactly this. This sums up you and I so accurately. I'm glad you brought it up. I wasn't going to. I'm glad you did. You want to pointlessly guess at who's going to win a sporting event so that when you guess correctly, and make no mistake about it, you are guessing correctly. I'm guessing out of the 68 teams in the field, you can name a player on maybe 4 of them. So you want to be able to, when you guess correctly, be able to hold up that piece of paper and tell everyone how smart you are. Look, everybody, I picked Vermont.
Yep.
I just want to enjoy basketball and root for every low seed upset. So I don't fill out a bracket. And so, yes, when there is an upset, when a 13 seed wins, I don't get to be there and be like, I'm one of the 7% of people that picked it right. But you know what I do get? I don't have to root against UMBC when they're going to knock off Virginia because it's going to cost me $5,000 when my national champion gets knocked out in the first round.
I don't have 5,000. I didn't put, it's not like I'm, it's not like I'm Mark Cuban.
How much? Sounds like somebody else want their wife to find out how much they put in their bracket.
Did you say you said 5,000? No, but I also so I'll see a team that they're like, they've only lost 3 games this year. I'm like, I don't know what that means because that conference has never, they've never played out of conference. And I don't know what it means if you've only played 17 or 20 games on the season. I don't know what 13-7 means in the ACC. And that's kind of what we were talking about with Louisville. I don't know. Like, usually you look for these trend lines. You're like, they won 7 in a row until they stopped playing for 4 weeks. Like, I don't know what any of it means, but I still do plan. And I really hope for everyone's sake that they are successful in keeping the virus at bay throughout the process of the tournament, just because I think it would be very disappointing to a lot of people for a lot of different reasons if this falls apart. And it does seem like they've really thought it through. Obviously not thought it through enough to see what happens when your hotel. By the way, is there anything more disappointing in the world? I mean, in the world, than showing up at your hotel and having them say, "Oh, I'm sorry, your room's not ready yet."
I mean, it is one of the worst first world problems. I mean, it really, truly is, because because it's not a problem in the sense that like you can get sympathy for it. Like, no one's going to be like, "Oh, you poor baby," but it's also not a problem with you can't do anything about it. And all your options are just sit around or drive around, or so, like, you don't really have there's no recourse. So you're trapped.
They're like, well, you can enjoy the pool. And you're like, I'm sitting here in my jeans. I can't enjoy the pool. I can go to the pool. Like, I want to correct them. Like, no, I can't enjoy the pool. What I want to do is go up into my king suite and strip down a little bit and watch some TV because no one cares, and eat chips in the bed. And then I'll go enjoy the pool. Right. But that's not an option. So you sit there, and it's just that tenuous relationship you start to build with the desk clerks, where you kind of walk up, and I walk up like every 20 minutes, but like, hey, they seem to have gotten a room. Is it? I find that, and it's a Keith Strudler kind of problem. It's the kind of place I find myself quite often. And I also say, that said, one of the great joys in life is showing up after, getting to a hotel very early because of a flight situation at 9 a.m. And you're like, hey, I'm just going to leave my stuff here. They're like, oh, we actually have a room. And you get in and you get all that free time,
I'm going to throw the converse at you real quick. And we got one more story we got to talk about a great living situation. I'll throw the converse at you. That is great when you get in early and your room is ready. When you get in really late and they're out of the class of room you ordered and they have to put you in a premium room, that is living. It's how I ended up in a penthouse suite at the Mandalay Bay in Las Vegas. And the sentence or the story ends there. Here's a cool living situation. A parking lot attendant at the old Veterans Stadium in Philadelphia. And this is back in the late 70s, early 80s. His name is Tom Garvey.
You never had the opportunity?
I did. I grew up in the Vet. Yeah, the Vet was demolished when I was in high school, I believe.
Okay, good.
So I grew up going to games at Veterans Stadium. Tom Garvey lived in Veterans Stadium for 3 years. He was a parking lot attendant. He had a little parking office in the stadium. Notice there was an old concession stand across the hallway from his parking attendant office that was no longer being used as a concession stand. He converted that into an apartment. And being that as the parking lot attendant, you have to be the last guy out, essentially. You have to lock the doors, the gates behind the last car. He just never went home. He lived in the stadium for 3 years. He's now writing a memoir about it. And we should be putting up statues for this man. What a way to live.
And as you know, the Vet had its own jail and its own court system built into it. So why wouldn't it have an apartment? So this is kind of, I don't know if you read the story. I think it was the New York Times, where someone living in a New York City apartment opened up their mirror and found another apartment, secret apartment.
Yes, which was beaten only by, did you read the story about the people that worked at Grand Central Terminal in New York City who essentially built like a break room in an old abandoned part of Grand Central? They had like flat screen TVs and couches and hammocks and video game systems down there.
Don't tell me that America has lost its edge. Don't tell me that we are not the greatest nation in the world. We will find a way to recreate with flat screens one way or another. We will find a way to not do our jobs and to sleep for free one way or another. So here's the question. Now, I mean, living in a stadium is, look, people, they build all of these apartment complexes in view of the stadium, right? I mean, if you're in Chicago, what greater place to be than an apartment that has a view of Wrigley Field? This is kind of a trend line, right? Where would you want to live if you could secretly live anywhere? Where would you secretly want to live?
I mean, is this any stadium or is this just anywhere?
No, if you could secretly live anywhere.
Wow. This is all right. I mean, I know one of your favorite movies involves being locked overnight with Jennifer Connelly in like a Walmart superstore. And I got to tell you, like,
that's a good movie. It's a good movie. And you watched it and you enjoyed it.
I agree. It's a good movie. I'm not disparaging the movie. What I'm saying
I almost broke up with my high school college girlfriend over that movie because apparently I enjoyed it a little bit too much when we were watching and my running commentary was not appreciated.
What I'm going to say is based on that movie, I'm going to say a shopping mall. I would want to live in a shopping mall and have access to all the stores. That's what I would go with.
And you might want to go with like an American Dream situation where you've got,
you want it to be one of those, like a Mall of America, King of Prussia Mall, an American Dream. You want it to be one of those premium tier shopping malls. I'd want to live in a shopping mall. Not one of the kind of down where the highest end is like Le Bon Ton. Another sponsor that we will not get.
Please,
now, granted,
they're going out.
They
last
sponsored anything in 1984. However,
they're not
like the
coming
precedent
back.
We're setting.
I don't think that's a good relationship for us. We need to marry upwards. I mean, unfortunately, the Bon Ton and Sportish it's a perfect situation. Like the brand value seems to be right. So a shopping mall is a really, really good. So where would I want to have access to? I'll tell you what. How about a secret apartment in the White House?
So you're going like high value access. I went like, where could I have fun, have my necessities met? You're going like, I need truly secret access.
Now granted, if they saw you, they would kill you on sight, and that's a problem.
I mean, see, but here's if I'm going, like that route, right? Area 51? Right? Like, think what you could learn rifling through those filing cabinets at night.
It sounds a little too dangerous. I really am trying to think of where I want my secret apartment. Now, you can't tell anyone, but he had parties in there, correct?
Yes, not only did he have parties in there, he had parties with celebrities. Like, there are Eagles players that validated the fact that this guy lived there. He never took any pictures because he thought that would get him caught. But there's enough people that validated that these stories are true that he's writing a book about it. The Philadelphia Inquirer's written about it. Like, this is universally regarded essentially as this guy's not full of it. He did this.
Yeah, the challenge with some of these things, like when you do that, I'm trying to think of where. How about a secret apartment in Versailles would be nice. You have access to all the amenities.
So a secret apartment in a house. All of the places that you've listed are residential quarters to begin with.
My next one was going to be like, how about a secret apartment in Mark Cuban's house? But then I was like, well, then you would just want to live in his guest house.
Right. That's just known as.
So I think that's what I'm saying. I don't want a secret apartment anywhere. I just want to be able to live in some really rich, famous person's house.
I will say I have slept in a professional baseball stadium, not veteran stadium, not a major league baseball stadium, but I've slept in a minor league baseball stadium. It's pretty fun. Like, it's
you wake up and it's like, hey, I'm in the ballpark. Like, that's got to be kind of cool.
Yeah. And you're there alone in or with a small group of people in like a space that isn't active currently. Like, it's a big space, but it's not doing what it's used for. You kind of have the run of the place and you can go exploring a little bit and play games or do whatever you want to do. It's fun. A lot of baseball stadiums, a lot of like minor league facilities were actually renting their fields out as Airbnbs during the pandemic when their season was canceled. And as soon as I saw that, I'm like, you do this. This is worth it. It's worth the experience. It's going to be fun. So good on Tom Garvey for living in Veterans
How about an
Stadium
airport?
for 3 years.
How about an airport?
I think that's high on the list as well, to live at an airport, because then it's just like Tom Hanks in The Terminal. Make friends with the airport people. Like, I that's a good answer too. Airport and shopping mall, I think might be my top two.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think
what is an airport if not a shopping mall that people depart on planes?
Especially if you're like going to a good, like, I mean, the restaurants at every airport, which I find really annoying. But if I say, like, if I tell you I go to an airport and I just grab like a hot pretzel or something like that, you'll get offended. You'll be like, "Oh, it's just I don't know how to a restaurant."
Yes, and I
don't like spending that much money. I don't get excited about eating food in an airport, although I don't remember what an airport looks like at this point. But I don't get excited about it. It doesn't do me a lot of fun because I'm spending so much of a premium. It's too much.
I know. Life is tough. It's tough for the athletes in the NCAA bubble, and it's tough for Keith Strudler.
And it's tough for all those folks who want to go under the knife, and now they can't have the mayhem they wanted.
That's all the time we got for this episode of Sportish. Thank you so much for joining us. Remember, check out our podcast versions wherever they're served. Go to ftfnext.com to see old episodes there, or watch us as we premiere on your phone, on your TV, Thursdays at noon. Every Thursday at noon. We're there. We're on YouTube. He's Keith. I'm Jeff. We're done. See you.
Thanks for listening to Sportish. See you next time.